Welcome, no question about that. This is the Midweek Pod with me, Ed, and him, Daniel. Daniel, how's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
Surviving. I'm on the third leg of my UK tour. Now in Birmingham.
On your third leg? Interesting.
Yeah, well, it's a large third leg because I'm here for a week.
Oh.
Don't know what else you were thinking, Daniel. Ozzy Osbourne's funeral was here today. I only found this out when coming into Birmingham. And there were many people looked like they were doing Ozzy Osbourne type stuff. We're not talking about that. We're talking about mostly transfer market. I think it seems like there's movement happening on the striker front, maybe the goalkeeper front. Anthony's rejecting Saudi. And why haven't United signed a midfielder? And will they ever sign one? Seems like it's forever our weakness. You wrote a piece for The Guardian this week. Or was it last week?
It was last week, but they all merge into one.
Yeah, really do at the moment. Long summer, isn't it? About why haven't United signed a midfielder and you'd prefer one of those to a striker? Well, it looks like we're going to sign another striker, or at least going to attempt to, because lots of reports over the last couple of days that United narrowed their search down to Ollie Watkins or Benjamin Sesko. It seems like they might have picked up the phone to Villa, who gave them a number they didn't like. And so the usual transfer gossip lot are saying that Sesko is the man. What do you think about that?
I think my sense with Watkins perhaps is that to what extent is he prepared to push also to piss everyone off at Villa and burn his bridges to maybe or maybe not join United. And it feels also like Watkins might be the manager's choice and the club choice might be Sesko. And that makes a lot of sense, really, because if you're Ruben Amorim, you want to think about the future, but what you really got to think about is staying in a job.
Yeah.
And he might feel that Watkins is plug in and play, that he knows how to score goals in the Premier League. He knows how to create goals in the Premier League as well. He does it every season. So you get him in and then you take it from there. I could totally see why the club is saying no to that, if that is indeed the case, because the difference in cost between him and Sesko probably isn't that much. And what you're left with then is the player, you might get 2 years out of him. And then perhaps if you're absolutely certain about Obi, then Watkins could be the smarter deal, because then you'd have Watkins, 2 years out of Watkins, keep him still. Obviously, he's not going to suddenly stop being useful in 2 years. And then you've got someone else to become your first choice. But Watkins, he just doesn't feel like a United centre forward to me. He's a good player.
He is.
But if we were to get him, would you stop thinking about centre forwards that we could get?
No, and I
really.
think I
know I wouldn't.
Yeah, it feels like to me, and this may be unfair, but a little bit of a Casemiro for the forwards situation, where we get him in on a reasonably short contract, 3 or 4 years, but the fee is not commensurate with the short contract. So it looks very, very expensive on an annual basis. And by the end, you get of that 3 or 4 years, you've got a player who's a bit diminished and not quite as useful, and it doesn't look quite as good a deal. Then, and I would not be surprised in the slightest that Wilcox, the sporting director, and 𝐕𝐈, the transfer director, recruitment director, are not pushing for Sesko. Guru. Yeah, everyone's a fucking guru these days. But
I think also the thing with Sesko is we could say, well, we tried one of them already with Højlund, but that to me is not a fair comparison. I think Højlund had not played a lot of football when he came to United, not played a lot of international football. Sesko has played loads of fucking games and scored a lot of goals, a lot more goals than Højlund has. And it may still fail. I mean, this is United after all. So you can't rely on anything at this point. Like the players, to me, when we bought them, you're thinking, gosh, this one's got to be a slam dunk. Di Maria, Sancho, Pogba even almost, just haven't worked out like that. But Sesko's going to be coming into a team with proven Premier League players around him. Behind him is going to be Matheus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo, and Bruno Fernandes is there. There's not going to be as much pressure on him to rattle in 20 goals as there was on Højlund, because there are 3 Premier League scorers in the team. So that means that the burden of the goal scoring should not all fall on him. And more than that, he should have creators. And obviously, I've watched the same videos that we've all watched, and it feels to me like he's got a lot more to his game than Højlund does. He's got a much better first touch. And for Leipzig, as Ollie would say, as I understand it, and I can't say I watched a lot of them last season, he's been used almost as a player who drops off. But that's not because that's necessarily his skill set. It's because that's the way Leipzig want to play, and he can do it.
Yeah.
But if you watch that guy, I mean, and part of me is about to say, but you should say this about Rasmus Højlund too. If you watch that guy play and think he can't run the channels and can't attack the box, I don't know. I mean, I don't see that in him. I mean, I also think that Højlund should be capable of not fighting with centre-backs and running channels too, but it hasn't worked out like that. But watching Sesko's goals for Leipzig makes me think, actually, I don't want to miss out on this guy, and I don't want him going to Newcastle, as much as I also want the humour of him picking United over Newcastle.
Well, for sure,
I don't want him going there. And I don't think I would have quite felt this way about Mbeumo, actually. If Mbeumo had gone to Newcastle, I'd have said fine next, even though I really like Mbeumo as a player. Whereas maybe it's just because centre-forwards are so much harder to find, and also, particularly now, and also, if United hadn't bought Mbeumo, we just go, okay, well, we'll play Bruno Fernandes there, you're all right. Whereas we do need a centre-forward, even though I would prefer a midfield player, we do need a centre-forward. So if we go and get this guy, I'm saying I very much like the look of that. And with the players he's got behind him, I would be excited to see how that worked out.
Well, let's talk about one other thing that we haven't mentioned so far with Sesko is how good he is in the air, right? He's in the 99th percentile across top 7 Euro leagues for aerial duels and scored a fair number of goals with his head as well. He's a very different profile than Watkins. I asked a question on Twitter the other day. Is this the dual targets that we were told from the big hitters in the transfer news world, the transfer news industry, as we should call it these days? Very different, like physical.
But people grow up wanting to do that.
It's really weird, isn't it?
I love football. I'm going to never, ever report or comment on a game. I'm just going to talk about people moving. Interesting. I mean, I'm not like criticizing. It just.
You can't see it, but on the back of my shirt, I've got Ornstein across here because I'm a horny fan. No, I'm not. Fabrizio needs a nickname as well, doesn't he? Yeah, I mean, he's great in the air, Sesko. I think it makes more sense, and I could look like a tit in 12 months' time if we do this deal and it doesn't really work out. But I think it makes more sense from a financial, a squad building, and probably an Amorim profile point of view, even if Amorim might be pushing for, I need help now. Because, look, if Watkins came in, he's going to score 15 goals for United in the league next season, because that's what he always does, and he'll get a fair few assists as well. But I would imagine the glide slope of his physical decline would start to set in at some point. He's 30, or will be about to be 30, whereas you have a much longer, like if he works out, of course, if he fails, Sesko, we all look like tits and the club have spunked a load of money on a player that may be hard to move on. But you've got not only the 5 years of his contract to spread the fee across, but the second contract as well, if he's done well. And so it makes more sense from a financial sense and potential resale if you want to. And it's much easier, obviously, reselling a young player. I mean, United aren't great at selling anyway, so maybe that's a moot point. But it just makes sense from the financial construct of the deal, and probably tactically and resale if that comes into play too. So I can understand
on the aerial point.
Yeah.
On the aerial point also, it's not just about scoring headers from corners or scoring from crosses. It's about defending the box. And he's really good at that. And United aren't that good at that. And suddenly, like, a couple of centre-backs and him. And what we've seen this summer is, I believe it's not possible to express this other by saying raising the physical floor. But I'm fucking sick of seeing United in the tunnel and thinking, these look like a right bunch of pussies compared to the other team. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know Watkins isn't a wimp, but having a massive individual, I know that, because we know it from when United were good, teams would look at the physicality, not just the names in the tunnel, but the physicality in the tunnel, and think this is going to be an hard game. And also, on your point about Watkins guaranteeing goals, if we speculated on the 210s, I think that would be, I'd feel more like backing Amorim on that one if I was the board. But given that we've given him two guys who score goals in the Premier League, and obviously they've both had great seasons, but they've got track records of being able to score goals in the Premier League too. You put them in a team with Bruno Fernandes in it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, it feels like we can speculate just a little bit more on the centre forward, because we've signed, behind him there should be guaranteed goals. So if he goes and scores 20 league goals, brilliant. If he scores 10 league goals and then Bumo and 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 score 30 or 40 league goals between them, then that's already more goals than we got last season. And we haven't even talked about Bruno yet.
Well, final point on the forwards, I guess. It's interesting that Arsenal went for Gyökeres rather than Sesko, even though Sesko was apparently looked at as well for all the same reasons that we're talking about. Their thinking, and I think this was Ornstein's reporting, was that when they decided to change their target effectively to Gyökeres rather than Sesko, was more the, we know what we're getting. It's a kind of understood quality with Gyökeres, and in a team that has kind of failed to finish quite a lot. And the higher ceiling of Sesko may come into play down the line, and they're sick of being bridesmaids they want now. Whereas I wonder whether we're just a bit the opposite way round. You know, we're not looking for a final piece in the puzzle here. Actually, we are trying to build. It's going to still be a very expensive deal, like 60, 70 million euros is seemingly the asking price. And maybe the top end of that, maybe even more. And there's risk in that, of course. But with a younger player, you'd hope not so much risk, but a younger player that has played 200 games, right? Not the 20 that Højlund had played when he turned up, as you said earlier.
I think you're right about Arsenal, that Arsenal got to succeed now because this team's sort of coming to the end almost. I mean, their cycle has really happened. I mean, I also heard, this isn't based on anything I think I probably read on the internet, so I don't think this is any intel, that he wanted some kind of release clause as well, Sesko, if he was going to go to Arsenal. So that might be part of it. But if you offered me Sesko or Gyökeres, and I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly, and roughly the same price, you look at them as players, to me, it doesn't look that close. Sesko's got way more talent. And as you say, United, obviously it'd be nice if we could succeed now, but we're trying to be good in 2 years. We just need, ideal world, we want the manager to do well enough to keep his job, so we have a constant progression.
Indeed.
And if you're picking for that, you don't really want Gyökeres to be, what is he, 27 now? 29 going on 30 by the time you're good.
Indeed.
And because also by that point, what Bruno Fernandes is over the hill. And so it feels like that's worked the right way around for us. But it's also just, for me, I think worked the right way around for them. And again, I haven't seen loads of either of these guys as players, but looking at what they do, looking at their numbers, watching the compilations and reading about them, it feels a lot like Sesko is someone who could be one of the best of the generation. Gyökeres is sort of struggling, fighting to make himself something, and he's got very little time in which to do it. And there's no room for acclimatization there. He has to turn up and deliver immediately. Whereas even if Sesko turns up and doesn't deliver immediately, United still have options. Like, what's the work? Like, let's say Sesko turns up and he's shit for a year or two. United could easily play Bumo up front, 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 Bruno behind, mainly, and I mean, ideally a midfielder that isn't 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄, but someone we purchase in midfield. And we have Obi, and we have Højlund, and we have 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄. It feels that with those two purchases, yeah, this is a good player to go for. And if it doesn't work for a bit, in theory, we do have workarounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all fair analysis. And the reason why that Arsenal needed 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 is the reason why 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 needed Arsenal, right? They both need now. I wrote a while back on Twitter, Substack, one of these platforms, they all merge into one, that I felt it was very risky, a 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 deal, because nobody knows where his ceiling is, right? You can track the data across, and there's a whole bunch of models that would kind of look at how many goals a player should score given their underlying data at a certain level, right? But he's never played in an elite league ever, right? And that is unusual for a 27-year-old who's commanding a 70 million euro fee. So it is quite risky on all parts, but they feel like a good match, those two. All right, one of the underlying...
It's also, sorry, one last word on 𝐓𝐶𝐄𝐄. It's also quite weird for a striker to suddenly get good like that, and then to get good in the Championship, and then go to Portugal, and then at 27 to suddenly be good enough to be the difference in a title-winning campaign. It might happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I mean, there are players like, what's his name at Dortmund, the centre forward at Dortmund, whose name escapes me.
Now or in the past?
For example.
Oh,
Guirassy.
Yeah.
Like, that's one. I guess maybe Fulkrug might be another. I mean, who exactly?
And he wasn't that good.
But and he turned up and wasn't that good. Exactly. Like, 𝐓𝐶𝐄𝐄's career trajectory is unusual. And for him to turn up and be a proper factor in the Premier League at 27, having done what he's done until this point, that too is unusual. It's not impossible, but yeah, and the money's roughly the same. To me, this is not a difficult choice. I mean, I think if I was the Arsenal manager, it wouldn't have been a difficult choice either, and I'd still have gone for Sesko. But I understand why they didn't. But for United, who are aiming to get good, yeah, I think if we do end up getting him, and there is money for it, and it almost feels like, would you take it if he's this good? If he's as good as he looks, it's almost worth the transfer ban to get those three forwards in this month. If we need a midfielder and a goalkeeper so fucking badly, hit that segue out.
Oh well, yeah, very true. The data incels talk about 𝐓𝐶𝐄𝐄's box inefficiency, as in he doesn't make the right movement in the box, but his elite finishing. And I think Sesko is perhaps the other way round. And that's where smartly run data-centric clubs tend to focus, inefficient finishing, because they feel like they can upweight that. It's true of Alejandro Garnacho as well, which is why United should not sell that guy on the cheap. Even if we hate him, even in Ruben Amorim rather wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire, you don't sell him on the cheap, even if United are washing their dirty linen in public, because he's the kind of profile of player that a lot of top clubs would really, really want. Now, why haven't we bought a midfielder, Daniel?
To come back to that.
Yeah.
To come back to that, I think I would piss on him if he was on fire, because I don't feel like my piss would put the fire out. I just get to piss on him. You watch it.
I don't hate him. I don't hate him, but maybe there's some stuff I haven't heard yet.
Me neither. No, I'm just trying to analyze how that metaphor works.
Yeah. I mean, I have a way of words. I had a coach once, this is true, right, who said, Ed, you're too clever. Stop using so many fucking Latin words. And she was like, just be simpler. So now I've just taken to crude analogies to explain myself. If you want to score goals, you've got to get the ball to the strikers. I don't know, long words. She meant long words.
Using prior to.
Yeah. Yeah. We came, we saw, we didn't win any fucking trophies, Daniel. That was the Latin insult I was using. Oh. If you want to score goals, you got to get the ball to them. Are we going to be able to do it? We talked about this before. I can't find a combination of players in let's say we got 5. Bruno, Mainoo, Ugarte, Casemiro and Collier, and maybe Sekou Kone if he develops quickly. It's unclear, or Tyler Fletcher, right? Or both of the Fletchers. That's really 5. The combination of any of them doesn't make for a proper pivot to me. right? And the most natural might be Menu and 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄, but you're going to play Bruno, and he's going to play mostly at 8 this season, not 10, because we just spent 130 million on 2 10s. Can we get the ball to Cunha and Bueno and Bumo and Sesko if he arrives without the right kind of balance in midfield? And why aren't we linked with any midfielders? I mean, Hayden Hackney looks like he's going to Ipswich, and everyone was like, rock hard for him, to use one of my new metaphors. Why not? What's going on?
Hayden Hackney's going to Ipswich. I mean, that is very strange in that if he's a Premier League level player, you wouldn't expect that at all. I think, so to understand perhaps Amorim's rationale here, if we think about his game model, a lot of the ball progression comes from the wide centre-backs, not from the midfield players. So
True.
The inability perhaps to move the ball forward through the midfielders is less necessary if you've got Heaven and Euro as your wide centre backs. That'd be one. Two would be the wing backs.
Yep.
Dorgu started pre-season well.
Very well.
And obviously what you do in pre-season doesn't necessarily echo in what happens once the season gets going. But if he sort of continues the level of performance, but not just the level of performance, almost like the nature of performance, then he's another ball progressor with Ahmad on the other side. And then I guess what you need your midfielders for is more what 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐄 can provide. And whoever's next to him, whether it's Bruno or Menu, neither of them do the same thing as him, because then you might think, well, do we just not want another one of those? But I guess the idea is to make Menu more athletic so that you get more of the good bits and fewer of the bad bits and him on the ball more. And you also have the option of resting Bruno and proper competition for places. So although I want another midfielder, I'd love Wharton, I'd love Baleba, it feels like that might be a step too far this summer. And that, let's say, I mean, where do you think, let's say like the reports we're hearing about Sesko are true. And at this point, they feel well sourced enough so that they are in that Fabrizio Romano said club-to-club talks are going to begin. But also Craig Hope, who writes about Newcastle for the Daily Mail, says that Newcastle thinks Sesko's going to United.
Yeah.
So
we just told them.
Where do we think, is the money for Sesko coming from the money that we've earned from sales and cuts of sales so far, so that any players that we bin from here, we can then use the money for what's next? Or are we relying on what's next to finance that? And so at that point, we're really looking at what, a keeper and probably not a midfield player.
Yeah.
What do you think about the finances there?
Well, I think they don't have a PSL problem.
Just to finish.
Yeah.
Because we know that Mbeumo and Cunha roughly is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's assume that they more or less balance. So then there's the players that we've got cuts of income for. And take it from there.
Yeah. Well, so like two things. We kind of know the balance of the Cunha breakdown. I actually think it's like, we're not accountants and it's really boring talking about accountancy all the time, but you got to think about the 5-year cost and you got to think of the structure of the payments, because that's cash is king in football, and especially at United right now. So we know the structure of the payments for Cunha. It's in 3 things over the next 2 years. We don't know the structure of the payments from Bumo. That didn't come out. So we don't know how front-loaded it is or whether they split it evenly. That would really help the cash flow position. We do know that we've saved about 15 and a bit million on Rashford. That's partly his wages and the tax position as well. That's a payment on Sesko this year, right? And they must be confident that they will be able to sell him for something next year. They must be confident that they will get a fee for Garnacho, given that all the briefing coming out of Chelsea's valuation of Nicholas Jackson is ridiculous for a player who can't fucking finish. But they're keen on him. It would seem so. I think they must feel they're fairly confident they could get the deal done. There's not a rush because we've gone past the 1st of July. So anything that happens, whether it's now or on the 2nd of September at the end of the window, is in the same accounting year. It doesn't matter. So they must be confident enough that they can get some deals done, that they won't be they're not in a PSR position problem, really. We know this because Mark Critchley at The Athletic did that great piece breaking down exactly the accounting methodology that United are using and why they were never going to have a PSL problem, because everyone was looking at the wrong fucking accounts. And it's the cash issue that's the problem. And they still can go and borrow another £100 million on the Bank of America credit card, which they would rather not do. And they've said they're going to be sustainable, but maybe they'll front load a purchase now and get the money back later in the window. I think that's where they're feeling. And that makes this kind of all kind of work, right? If you add the numbers up, and I think next week or later in the week, I'll do a finance pod with Jamie where we'll break it all down and what it looks like. But I think the numbers work. Anyway, BMAT analysis there.
So also, so with Rashford, that's, as you say, a payment on Sesko for the season, but then there's also the Elanga and the Fernandes money.
Yeah,
and Elanga actually, on the subject of the players we've already talked about, feels like, if you look at him as a benchmark, 55 million, the players that we've signed look like incredible business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God, yeah. And
then, so we got whatever it is, another 15 million quid for that. So are we saying that's more Sesko money, or are we saying that's a goalkeeper? A down payment.
Well, I think it looks like it's not 15 million on Elanga, because it looks like the cut was 15% over on the profit, right? So it's more like 7 or 8, but also the Alvaro Fernandez Carreras money. So, I mean, together they make something. A little bit on Maxi Oyedele as well, a couple of million there. If Iqbal at Utrecht is doing fantastic, apparently, it doesn't look like he's moving. Of course, if they had word that Mason Greenwood is moving, they've got a 50% of cash on that one. It doesn't look like Mason Greenwood is moving, but at some point that's going to provide a really big lump sum, which I think is fair for the quality of player that, not the quality of human, but the quality of player that Marseille got. And so I think they're thinking it works out just about, right? They wouldn't be pursuing this, because they've got to know that RB Leipzig are going to play hardball on Sesko, and they're not going to go, oh yeah, you can have him for 20 million euros or whatever.
Yeah, I think I read that there was a gentleman's agreement with Leipzig and Sesko that he can leave sort of 60, 70. And I also think I read a breakdown of the Brentford deal from Bumo that looks pretty nicely, that the money's pretty nicely spread, and United actually negotiated something quite good on that, and that Brentford got the money that they want, achievable add-ons, but what United really wanted was not having to give them a lot up front this summer. And so it feels like, and we can't say anything until the players play, but obviously Cunha's just a release clause, so that's no negotiation there. But it looks like the Mbumo deal, actually, they negotiate quite well at the same time as avoided paying him for a few more weeks. And yeah, it looks like, as you say, then if they can get Sesko done without having to sell anyone else, and then it feels like Anthony, the news on Anthony is that he's decided not to go to Saudi and wants to go to Betis. If that's the case, it still feels like he's got to go somewhere this summer, surely.
Yeah. Although I would say that Anthony, it's still possible for United to do another loan with certain conditions, and it makes sense, right? So as long as you're kicking the PSL can down the road a little bit, it's £15.8 million a year, basically. So if Betis were able to come up with a bit more money, or it's a purchase at a low value with future add-ons or future percentage of sale, something that constructs up to £32.5 million, right? At some point, you covered your PSL problem. You get rid of Anthony. He's not on big wages, but you've covered your PSL problem. It was 15.8 up front now, and a bigger amount later. They could go, yeah, as long as it's in this 3-year cycle, we've not lost out. It's amazing, like the kind of jiggery pokery you have to do on the numbers in order to make this all work out. Best case scenario for United, of course, is someone comes in with a big bid. You know, one of our friends in Saudi that we don't have, because we don't have that relationship. Chelsea do. Chelsea, by the way, Chelsea, João Felix has been shite for best part of half a decade now. And looks like they've got 40 million. Yeah, career. Yeah. He was brilliant at Benfica.
Against United, though, the fucker.
Well, he scored 2 brilliant goals against United, remember? Yeah. Yeah. Best case scenario for United with Anthony is that we get a big fee, obviously, right up front and Saudi would be it. But if he doesn't want to go there, you can't force him to. He's still got 3 years on his contract with United. If he's fallen in love with Betis and Seville as a city, then fair enough. They sold 2 players this summer. They've got to work out how to buy him.
Oh, I totally respect Anthony's right to work wherever the fuck he wants. And I guess there's part of me in my head is saying he's one of the very few Brazil players that was vocally opposed to Bolsonaro. So there's a bit of me that goes, maybe he's going, and I'm not playing for you fuckers either. I mean, it feels more likely he's saying, I want to play in a proper league, or I really like Betis, or both, one of those two things. But again, like, no one's got any business telling anyone where they have to provide their labour. So I'm not dissing Anthony for deciding that that's what he wants to do. The problem, obviously, is how you get him to where he wants to get to for a fair fee. And I don't know what the answer to that one is. But back to your point about Chelsea, it does look, obviously, it looks thus that Chelsea are owned by Clearlake and Piff own a little bit of Clearlake. I guess there's something nagging in my head that's going, well, Piff own a lot of shit, like billions, maybe even trillions of pounds that they invest. The amount that is invested in Clearlake is fuck all, relatively speaking. Are they getting involved at a granular level to enable players to leave Chelsea to go to Saudi for way more money than any other fucker will pay? Is that on account of the relationship with Saudi?
I don't think it's a contractual relationship, right? So I don't think it's going to be...
No, agree.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, the way the LP agreements typically work, right, is that you have very limited rights. I mean, limited partner, right? The LP agreement, for those who aren't in the finance biz, is the agreement that a fund has and the fund manager, so Clearlake being the fund, Todd Bowley being the fund manager, has with the people who provide the money into the fund, right? It's not, if you're a venture capital or private equity, it's not your money. You're investing someone else's money and you get 2% annual management fee and 20% of the profits on any sales, right? A 2 and 20 model, right? So, but there will be a personal relationship there. That's what's greasing the wheels, not some kind of nefarious behind the books deal where Saudi have decided to fund Chelsea. I do still think it is, even if there are firewalls, like between the different entities, PIF and Clearlake and the other investors in Chelsea.
Is there not a Chinese wall, Edwards?
No. It's a firewall. And before people gain my mentions, I do think it's not a great look, right? And many, many funds avoid conflicts in their investments, many of them, right? And Chelsea, Clearlake, Newcastle, and 9 PIF directly owned or affiliated clubs do not avoid those conflicts at all. It's not how I'd have worked when I was in the biz, right? And many of the people I worked with, of the various different types of funds I worked with, and it's pretty odd from that perspective. It is really odd, right? Because you have fingers in that many pies, it causes some real challenges. Because it's not only the full ownership of Newcastle, they're looking at a multi-club model there, and the 4 direct-owned clubs in the Saudi Pro League, and the 4, well, it's soon to be 5 indirectly owned by companies that are owned by the PIF. It's all the sponsorship arrangements as well. It's the FIFA Club World Cup, which was entirely funded by Saudi investments into DAZN, who then funded all the prize money, which also funded Chelsea and City. And it's the Aramco sponsorships of the World Cup as well, and so on and so on and so on. And there's so much of this money flowing around that you cannot avoid some form of direct or indirect conflict. It's not awesome, Dan.
No. The whole thing is grim. I'm just trying to work out if the relationship with Chelsea, Clearlake, the Saudi League is dodgy or not.
I mean, there's levels of dodginess, right? So one other thing is interesting. Like Ineos have 2 billion and another 3 billion to come in massive petrochemical refinery plants in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, they take the raw materials and turn it into these little plastic pellets, which is then turned into your Coke bottles and all sorts of other plastic products. That's where they've made their billions. So, Jim, you want to pull some strings? Sir Jim? Anyway, so
it is hilarious that we're managing to not have any of this Saudi money. But
yeah,
I have a further question. If let's say United wanted to sell Garnacho to Villa, and we're going to take Watkins or Emiliano Martinez, that deal would never be a swap because both would want the sale for PSR, right?
Well, United definitely would. United 100% would never do a swap with Garnacho because he's got a 0 book value. Make absolutely no sense. They'd want that in cash. Villa's slightly different because Martinez and Watkins obviously have a book value, although both of the book values be quite low.
Who decides what is a fair price at that point? Because if you just say, let's say for a second, sake of argument, you say that Garnacho is worth £20 million more than Watkins. Is there anything to stop you going, well, you give us 150 million for Garnacho and we'll give you 130 million for Watkins? Or does the price have to be realistic?
There's a tax issue because you do pay tax on these transfers. So you wouldn't want to go too overboard because you're going to pay a big pile of tax as well. I mean, obviously you write it off against your other expenses, so nets out. Also in Italy, so the answer is no. Like, how much is the value of a player? It's whatever the market will pay, basically, because they're unique assets. There's no one-for-one comparison anywhere. In Italy, though, Juve are in real trouble over the Artemelo deal with Barcelona because they did this ridiculous. So in Italy, the courts have said, hang on a minute, this doesn't look right. We want to have a look at this, and they're being taken to court over it. I don't think that would happen in England, and the Premier League certainly wouldn't do it either. So you could come up with some ridiculous numbers. I mean, look at the Forest reserve goalkeeper who went to Newcastle for £32 million and hasn't played a minute, right? And no one could name him.
The James Trafford one sounded mental as well. But then I think, and I said if you sold Garnacho for 120 million, exaggerating, and then I remembered that that Ħageth's just gone for 55 million.
Yeah, I mean, on which point, more serious point, Gittins, Madueke, Elanga, they basically do create a kind of relative benchmark for Garnacho. If United to go much below that, maybe there's discount because we've ostracized him and it'd be very difficult to reintegrate him. Maybe not the smartest thing to do, but much below that, and you really are ripping yourself off for no particular reason at all.
On that point about Garnacho, though, I guess, and I don't want to set too much store by what Luke Shaw says. I mean, we've heard it all a million times before. But in his interview yesterday, I think he did a roundtable. He did sort of say that he did make a point about the manager getting rid of dickheads.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
and it does send a message that you cannot cut me off on social media or in interviews, and that is necessary. And so we don't know exactly what Garnacho did and what's gone on with the relationship, but we do know that the manager probably thinks he's a decent player, probably also thinks he doesn't fit, and definitely thinks I need to draw a line in the sand here. And Ruben Amorim, whatever else he is, he's not a fucking idiot.
No.
He's absolutely not an idiot. So when he ostracises Garnacho, he knows what that means. He must know it means you're going to get less money for selling him, and he still decides to do it, even though the beneficiary of any money that United can get, the lead beneficiary is him. And he's drawn a line in the sand and saying, this is what you're going to need to do to play for me. And the players ultimately want to play for United. For most of them, if they leave, they're not getting anywhere better. So I don't know, but you hope that what he's done with those players is resonating throughout the group. And listening to Luke Shaw yesterday, at least, it felt like that was the case. I mean, whether it sustains to the beginning of the season or sustains a few bad results, obviously that's a different thing. But it is also the case that the players that are there sort of need this manager to work, right?
They really do. And it was a really interesting interview with Luke Shaw. I mean, I think he's actually very honest and eloquent in his media stuff that he's done before, right? Not just this one. And of course, the replies on social media were like to the, hey, you can't cut the manager off anymore. Were basically like, well, you've been doing it for 10 years, Luke. A little different, right? Because I don't think it's ever been a question around his attitude, although some people say he might come back a little, heavier than he should be in the summer. Doesn't look like it this summer. He looks very, very trim this summer. The manager called him world class as well, which is interesting, given that we suspect he's going to be a rotation option, right, on the left-hand side of the back three, not at wing-back, especially not if Patrick Dorgu is looking as good as he's looked in, albeit 2 games. Right? I'm not going to judge too much on that. So,
one option you have with Shaw is you play him as your left centre-back and you play someone that can play football in the middle. You play one of Heaven or Euro in the middle going into midfield. And I mean, we know Martinez isn't going to be back for the first few games anyway. I mean, I don't think this will happen, at least at the start. I think it'll be Maguire or De Ligt. But you could play Shaw on the left and play one of the other 2 in the middle and see how that goes. But I agree with you. Shaw does look trim. And then Boomer also, who, remember, has played for Thomas Frank, who is not behind the door in making his players fit and work hard. He said that the training was hard. And that's sort of the balance, isn't it, at this stage of the season, is the training being hard, but without exacting too much physical damage on the players and getting them to that level of fitness. But, I mean, with Ferg, his thing was always he wants them at their strongest in sort of February to May. I don't think we want that at this point.
No.
We need them as fit as they can possibly be at the start of the season. And we saw it. When we saw it after lockdown, when United just looked, I don't know what they did or what the players did, but United just looked fitter than everyone else. We need them to start this season as the fittest team in the league. And then let's see what happens after that. Because a bad start, and it's not even going to matter what goes on in March and April. Whereas a good start, and then let's hang on. And I think this is one of the differences I've noticed over the last decade between being good and being shit. That when the fixtures come out, when we were good, I looked at the run-in, and when we shit, I look at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I know really that we need. I know Ollie pulled it around once or twice, but generally speaking, you need to start properly, and particularly now we're at the firing managers in November cycle.
Yeah. Well, and also it's a very tough first 8 fixtures. First quarter of the season really hard, and not in Europe, so we could only have 40 games this season. We hope to have a couple of domestic cup runs, but so getting tired towards the end of the season feels less likely in what is a much less packed season. So yeah, absolutely, they need to be fit and going at it right away, because Ruben will be out of a job if they're not. Right, before we go, quick note on goalkeepers. It's interesting because it looks like Lucas Chevalier is going to Paris Saint-Germain. Donnarumma is not signing a new contract. I don't know where that means he's going. He's not going to City because City have just bought James Trafford. He's not going to Chelsea because they've got 900 goalkeepers. Yeah. So it is Donnarumma thinking of going to Saudi himself. Seems a bit young for that.
Bit young for a comb over as well, though, in fairness.
Oh, man, he looks bad. It's really bad. He really, just go bold. Do the full Fabien Barthez and just go, yeah. So it's an option. I mean, it would be very expensive, not necessarily from the transfer fee point of view, because Paris Saint-Germain got him for free and he's just got the year left, but he's on mega wages and he'd want mega wages. There's Lemons, the young Belgian keeper they've talked about as maybe a number 2 if they can get rid of Bayendia. Emi Martinez seemed to have backed off from because too big a fee, too big a wages for an older player. Maybe he wants to be definite number 1. Maybe they can't get rid of Onana. It is kind of pointing to they're all sort of testing the water, and the nightmare scenarios we're stuck with Andre for next season seems most likely.
Andre and Alto.
And he chucks one in on the first day of the season. Yeah.
Andre and Alto. I don't want Martinez. I can see why his mentality might be attractive to the manager, but I don't personally feel like he's a good enough goalkeeper to say,
Yeah.
let's get him in and just say, well, the mentality will sort of fill in the technical holes. Donnarumma is one. It's funny, like he's someone that I haven't massively rated previously, but I thought he was really, really good in the Champions League knockouts last season.
Mm-hmm.
Really good against Liverpool. And so I don't know. I mean, he's still, how old is Donnarumma? He's still really young.
He's like 26 because he started playing in like 12.
Yeah.
So he's been around forever. Yeah.
So I take Donnarumma over Martinez. Lamon's not a clue. Why are Paris getting rid of Donnarumma? Do we know?
He's not signing a new contract. I think he just wants to do another thing, or he wants another big freebie payday.
So it's not them saying go away, we want this other, we want Chevalier. It's him saying I'm going and now having to get another keeper.
Yeah, I think so. And they're just precipitating it by getting the best young keeper in France.
And then suddenly, if you've got Donnarumma, and I mean, as I said, like he's not someone I fully trust, but he does know what it takes to win. And for the defenders, looking around and seeing him there will probably make them feel more confident than turning around and seeing Onana maybe there, maybe somewhere else, before palming another one back out into traffic.
And having a little cry, yeah. I mean, one thing you get with Donnarumma, and it's like, hey, might not have a lot of cup football, but he does save a fucking penalty, and we've had Onana and Dave diving actively the other way for a decade or more now. So it would be something, wouldn't it? All right. Well, we haven't done a transfer pod for a little while. It seems like there may be some activity happening, and it's a good test for this new transfer guru in Vivel, who of course has worked with Sesko. So he's pushing. He has had direct personal involvement, lots of time knowing this player, and Wilcox, who's had a big promotion, going from youth football to sporting director of Manchester United in a year. Big test for them where they can get this done. Do need to sell some fuckers though, because it wouldn't be good having 4 of them left on the books playing with the under-21s come September.
That feels unlikely, I'd say. I mean, Malacia, who knows? But it feels like Anthony, Garnacho, and who's the other one?
Malacia, Rashford, and Sancho.
Sancho. It feels like a way will presumably be found to get Anthony at least alone, to get Garnacho gone, and who knows what happens with the other 2.
All right, Daniel, let's call it there. We are on NQAT Pod on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Substack, and Blue Sky. You're on Blue Sky. You're not really on Twitter much these days.
I got hacked.
Yeah, never got it back.
They wouldn't give me my. They said they couldn't prove. They couldn't prove it was my account. It's just like how many other dickheads would have a thread of 1 million tweets called 3,000 Years of Beautiful Tradition about the ridiculousness and peculiarities of being Jewish. I mean, but here we are.
Yes, I suppose you should have paid for a blue tick there, Danielle, and verified yourself or something like that. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone. You can catch us on Patreon/NQAT Pod or Apple Podcast subscriptions if you want to listen to me and Daniel talk about England's win in the European Championships this summer.
Benjamin!
yeah. No, you go. More screaming. It's good. It's a good name for it. It has to be said. See you, everyone.
It's a good Ghanaian name.
Yeah.
So, thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate the support.